Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowery.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery. I'm an exercise physiology and a nutrition professor of about 20 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
This is Phil Stevens. I run Strength Guild. I'm a powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, all-around amazing guy.
Hey, it's Dr. Magdy and the creator of the Flex Diet Cert, associate professor at the Carrick Institute, and now on almost a record of being at home. We just got extended till the 18th, so this is by far the longest time I've ever been home.
Oh, Mike, you know, one of my students just yesterday, through online interactions, it's how we do it these days, he said all the gyms in Ohio are going to be closed until May 31st now. They extended it. And I'm like,
oh, really? Oh, bugger. Yeah, we have no idea what gyms are opening around here. Like, no one has any clue, as far as I can tell, so...
Wow.
Yeah.
Things closed here until the 18th and then slowly start to reopen, from what they said.
Yeah. That's what they kind of told us, too, but there was no definition as to what, and supposedly some restaurants are supposed to be able to do takeout and stuff now, but yeah.
Yeah. We've been doing takeout some places even during the lockdown.
Yeah, we've had a few local places opted to stay home. When I first got back, I went to the Chipotle, and there was like two cops standing outside, and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to close my Chipotle. I'm going to run in right away. And I'm like, what are the cops doing outside? They're like, well, they're enforcing that they can only have 5 people in the store at a time, policies and everything like that. I'm like, oh, interesting.
That brings up a good point. If I know this is all tangential, we'll get to the material soon, everybody. But I was hearing that like the feds don't want to help the states with any kind of direct funding or the municipalities, and I'm thinking, well, then who's going to pay these cops? Because if you're going to enforce lockdown, don't you need even more police doing this stuff? I don't know. It seems sort of backwards to me, but anyway. Yeah,
and I'm like, the cops are enforcing policies at Chipotle. What has become of the world?
I know.
I heard that.
Right. We need separation of burrito and state here.
Yeah.
All right, Phil, you said there's some cool stuff happening in the world of strength.
Yeah. So today it's going on the regular ESPN. Hathor is going to try and set a new world record deadlift of 501 kilograms or over. So, what is that, 1,104 pounds? Something like that.
Yeah, about right.
Absurd. Wow.
So, yeah, that should be a good one.
That'll be live streamed, do you think, too?
Yep.
I might try to watch it.
It's live streamed because Rogue's doing it live stream. I have that open right now.
Oh.
So it's live in
what time?
2 hours. 2 hours from now. 10:45 a.m.
10:45?
That's what it says on there. May 2nd, 10:45 a.m.
Okay.
But,
well, by the time I publish
by the time it airs.
On air.
Yeah. But, and I think that's Eastern because somebody posted 10 a.m. Central.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'll check.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you guys think he'll do it?
I think he's got a shot at it, yeah. I think there's a big to-do. Everybody's pissing and moaning. Well, half the people are pissing and moaning. Oh, it shouldn't be a world record, but Jan Todd came out. Yeah, because it's not in an actual competition.
Oh, shit.
But Jan Todd came out with the history of, she wrote a good piece about the history of strongman. And she said, realized that most of these world records were set in circuses and sideshows and
Facts, man.
And stuff like that. Yeah, it's the history of the sport.
Yeah.
So nobody ever before them bitched about when and where the world record was set. So
as long as someone could verify and witness it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So and he's bringing in judges and everything else.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think he can pull it off, but because he looked strong at the Arnold. And
Yeah.
I was surprised he didn't go for it there. Once Rogue
Well, he
up
was going
the-
to,
up
and
the
then he say something beforehand that he changed his mind. He wasn't going to do it because it was in competition. He wanted to just do the best he could in the competition. And
yeah, and I think it's a smart move.
Yeah,
because
I
he won
agree.
the Arnold. And if he pulled a big ass deadlift, what if he hurt himself? Strained something after he did it, and then didn't win the Arnold. So he did what it took to win the Arnold.
Yep.
So
That's cool.
His training leading up to it, though, some of his pulls that were heavy, they look pretty easy.
yeah, I know. So I think he's got it.
Yeah,
See.
that's my bet too. What do you say, Lonnie?
I don't know. I don't have as much of a frame of reference, probably, but the numbers just sound absurd to me. Just
So insane.
yeah. I mean, absurdly high, right? I guess that's good. I mean, as long as you're going to verify it, it does beg the question to me, though, is like, Phil, depending on, I don't know how powerlifting works, like, how much different. I'm guessing that it's a little bit stricter as far as competition lifts, but could you set a world record if you 8 ways to Sunday, you had Eddie Cohn and a bunch of people judge you? You're like, listen, I'm a beast right now. Come to my gym. I'm going to do something absolutely heroic.
No,
That's not going to work.
but in powerlifting and weightlifting, there's that standard where it has to be at a meet with 3 judges. So that's always been the case. And strongman, that hasn't. Like we just talked about, they were in vaudeville acts and circus shows, and
Exactly,
it
yeah.
was kind of whatever you could wherever you're at.
Because it begs an interesting question, though, because of the ways that we can validate things, especially with your facility, and you can get 3 judges in there, and you could do whatever you want. What are you going to say? What are you going to pretend I didn't just deadlift 1,100 pounds?
Yeah,
Pretend I didn't do that.
So-
I mean, it's still
Now
sort
we
of
have
bragging.
Video. I mean,
Yes.
you have
Right.
video proof.
Yeah, and they're live streaming this thing.
Yeah.
He's using calibrated plates and this and that. I mean, so
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting. So
Okay. One mail. We'll do the mail first. It's just a very cool tip, and then there's 2 little bits of science news. And then everybody, today we're going to talk about weird competition tales. So things that we've experienced ourselves. We've probably touched on this in different ways throughout the years, but time move on, listeners move on. So we'll each bring up a couple of weird things we've experienced ourselves competing. But the mail. This is from Neil. He says, "Howdy. I hope you and yours are staying well. I came across the article below. I thought you would find it interesting. It's from littlecoffeeplace.com. Stay well, Neil." Now, I hadn't heard this, but they talk about adding salt to your coffee. So it says, according to Alton Brown, who most people should realize is sort of a food celebrity, cookbook author, Food Network, all that kind of stuff. Adding a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt to 6 tablespoons of coffee grounds neutralizes the bitterness and the acidity. It says if you put it in the grounds instead of in the brewed cup, of course, then you could choose your preferred method of brewing. It's just basically rounding out and balancing the flavors, apparently. Apparently, this is a long-standing tradition in northern Scandinavia, Siberia, Turkey, and Hungary. So, I don't know. I'm going to give that a try, Neil. I hadn't heard about that. For all the keto people, apparently there's a bit of a loss of electrolytes, including sodium, in people that are ketogenic, in ketosis. And maybe this is a good thing in that way, too. I don't know.
And that was putting it in the grounds, Lonnie. I've done it after it's been brewed and add some MCT and other stuff to it, and that's pretty tasty.
Yeah,
they're saying put it in the grounds as you're brewing it, right?
Well, yeah, they're saying put it in the grounds and you could just have it on hand. But they're also saying if your coffee is sort of old or bitter or just nasty in some way, yeah, you could just add it to the cup too.
Okay.
If it's bitter, I think about Robusta beans. You know how because they're just not as tasty as Arabica beans. Anyway. So.
Higher caffeine, though.
Right. Well, right. I mean, that's why, to me, they're so valuable. I think there's something like Robusta beans are something like 30 or 40% of the market now. I'd have to look that up. But
wow. That used to be weren't they crap? Wasn't that what your coffee guy was saying, Phil?
I think so. I don't remember.
but they're strong, like you say. But they provide the kick in the pants, and it's funny. Some of these northern Scandinavian countries, like the kahvi that I was drinking when we were in Finland, it's not like the frou-frou extend your pinky experience. Those guys, it's sort of yellowish. It's a little sour, kind of, as far as I remember. But those guys, it's dark like 20 hours a day, and they need a kick in the pants to go do some serious work. It's just no nonsense stuff. So
I love the coffee in Finland, and I told the story when I was teaching in Sweden last year. Normally when you're teaching in seminars, it's the big things of coffee. It's just kind of whatever. It's just a caffeine source. And I'm drinking the coffee. I'm like, God, this stuff's amazing. It turns out the guy who was running the gym used to be a barista and was into coffee and got up in the morning and brewed it himself from the beans that were like literally right across the street from a guy who roasts his own beans.
Bonus.
It was amazing.
Well, cool stuff. Yeah, I'm going to try that, Neil. I might try that in my Via, like the instant coffee, because it's not as good as brewed coffee, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe it will help that. Okay. Here's two pieces of science news before we get into some of our tales of competing.
Strength and muscle sport news.
Is performing repetitions to failure less important than volume for muscle hypertrophy and strength? This is something we alluded to last week, I think. This is from Lacerda and colleagues. It is a Brazilian paper that appears literally this month, and I mean May, like now. Journal of Strength Conditioning Research. The aim of the study was to investigate the effects of muscle failure or not muscle failure on strength and muscle hypertrophy. Now, they took 10 untrained men, and this is where I'm going to want you guys to speculate like how this might differ in trained guys. But 10 untrained men, they did unilateral training protocols of knee extension. And, we've talked about that before. It just seems to be this easy go-to default, even though it's not particularly relevant. I don't see a lot of bodybuilders spending all day on leg extensions as their primary mass builder. But 3 to 4 sets, 3 minutes rest on both sides, 55 to 60% of their 1-rep max on both sides. They assessed the strength and size and some EMG, so sort of muscle activity, before and after 14 weeks. So that's a reasonable length of time. Both training protocols were similarly effective in inducing strength and muscle hypertrophy gains. It says, however, individual analysis data suggests that the training to failure protocol that had equal volume to the train to failure side may promote similar or even greater muscle hypertrophy of the vastus lateralis and muscular endurance when compared with the train to failure protocol. And they just sort of conclude that non-muscular failure training could be a more appropriate strategy to increase muscle hypertrophy, and then they say vastus lateralis, and muscle endurance in untrained individuals as compared with the muscle failure type of training. How does this? Well, let's ask you, Mike, about the what you think about this. Any insights about the
I haven't looked at that study yet. Did they match volume on it?
Yeah,
or did they leave
volume matched. I think that's why they say 3 to 4 sets. I'm guessing that the side to failure, they squeezed out a few more reps of each of those, right? And
Interesting. I mean, if I knowing that setup and I were to guess that the outcome, I would have thought the trained to failure probably would have done a little bit better, especially in untrained subjects. Maybe you just get a little bit more motor recruitment from it because you are going to failure in the last set. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's always hard, and we could all sit around here and go, oh, but they used untrained subjects. But most studies do untrained subjects, and we also know that they adapt to pretty much anything. I mean, the good part is it was a longer study of 14 weeks, which is good. If it was super short, I'd be like, eh. I mean, in practice, I'm a bigger fan of just as much volume as you can accumulate, trying to keep your quality of work as high as possible. So higher frequency, and I mean, up to a point, at some point it's just diminishing returns. You just get joint pain. But there's some other stuff showing that if you do more isolation work and you're taking a lighter load, then you probably have to go to failure, and some of the stuff has been done. Like Nick Bird had the one study of 30% of 1RM on a leg extension also.
Yeah.
Failure. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Who was the author on it? I'm definitely going to pull it up and give it a read.
Yeah, the first author was Lacerda, Lacerda.
Okay.
Looks like
interesting.
Lucas Lacerda. Yeah. For me, honestly, I think about some of the guys at Bodybuilders Gym where I train, or I'm sure at Phil's gym. You're not going to see giant changes in things like cross-sectional area and, hypertrophy of the experienced huge guys. And I think that maybe that's why this study, you choose a noob, and they've got nothing to do but grow. They're going to change, and you're going to see those change scores over 14 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Phil's going to add an inch to his quads in the next 14 weeks kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably why they use the untrained. But it makes me wonder, because of the train to failure thing, that if these guys are complete noobs, what if they can't push themselves that hard? They're like, oh, that's one extra rep. Okay, I'm all done now.
Yeah. That's where you always want to talk to the author and see, like, how was the study actually done, and I assume it was supervised and all that kind of stuff too. And it's one of those things that's interesting because when you've done studies, technically it's like, okay, I'm done. Isn't really anything else you can do. You can't pull out a gun and be like, all right, you bastard, 2 more reps. It's like you just kind of write it down and go, okay. But I mean, you can definitely see different levels of exertion too, even though it gets reported kind of the same. And then you get into trying to make sure you qualify what the RPE is and making sure they have experience doing it and all the other rabbit holes to try to control for that.
And I admit, I usually pull abstracts. Sometimes I'll go pull the actual research abstract if it's a follow-up to sort of a secondary news source, but I don't pull full papers. Yeah. We're going to bore people to death, and it is funny about the gun thing. It makes me wonder how, if things, in our weird competition tales, Phil tells a story of a judge with a shotgun. You will squat this.
Yeah, because I even had that when I did the study on ride time to exhaustion. We had a couple higher level athletes, and it was all baseline to each individual performance and everything to try to control for that. But I had 2 people that ended up just not making the cut, and luckily, somewhat luckily, I guess they dropped out of the study. But they went from an RPE, and we went through the whole thing. We made sure they knew what they were doing, we explained the scale, all the stuff you do, and they went from like a 4, 4, 6. Oh, that's a 10. I'm done. It's like, well, wait a minute. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
what about the reality of it in a brutal power gym, Phil? Trained to failure versus not. Would you rather have someone get the same volume fresher, or go for those few extra reps within a set? I mean, it's also calculated with you guys, right? I mean,
yeah. Generally, we don't train to complete failure a lot. Not very often at all. If it is, it's usually early in the training cycle. Mm-hmm. So the rest of the time we're making sure, and a lot of this is for just mental strength, not being used to missing weights. That's a big thing. So when you approach the bar, you just all is making it. But I mean, to miss a rep on rep like 12, whatever, it doesn't matter. So maybe when we're early on, we push things a little harder, and there'll be a missed rep here and there. But in general, we don't do a lot of it. It's cut it off at a 9 or an 8.
Yes, right. That's what I thought. Like, powerlifters are so much more calculating than bodybuilders. You're like, listen, if you're out to do 5 sets of 5, you walk away. That was your dose of iron. And now, not to say it's invariable. Like, you're like, hey, I feel freaking great. Maybe you, like you say, you reward them in some ways with that, right? Like, fine. Yep. Oh, PR, baby.
Yep, exactly. So,
but
and hypertrophy is such a weird animal too, because it's almost like, I talked to Eric Helms about this. It's like a side effect. It's like trying to specifically target hypertrophy training. We've got a fair amount of literature on it, but it almost seems more like a side effect of training, right? Where strength, you have something that's very specific. Hey, you either made the lift with a single rep or you didn't, and we kind of know more how to train for that. Where, man, like hypertrophy, there's so many different ways that you can induce hypertrophy, right? There's like a much, I'd say, less limited way to pull a heavy single in a powerlifting meet, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of variables too, right? Yeah. I mean, directly like nutrition and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, just so many things. Okay, this next one is for anybody who has had a surgical repair. We've talked a little bit about collagen in recent months, about how the turnover for, different type of collagenous tissue is actually higher than we once thought. We used to think it was real slow. Anyway, this is from Marie Kjaer, Kjaer. Man, help me, Mike. You're sort of Norse background.
Yeah.
Kjaer, Kjaer. I don't know. Multi-nutrient supplement increases collagen synthesis during early wound repair in a random controlled trial of patients with inguinal hernia. So this is brand new stuff from the Journal of Nutrition. It says inguinal hernia disease is associated with an imbalance of collagen metabolism. Surgical stress has a negative impact on nutrients important for collagen synthesis. So they're looking at, essentially providing building blocks and the necessary nutrition support with hernia repair. And I'm guessing there's powerlifters out there who've, blown an inguinal hernia before. So it says 21 men. They were 55 years old. Body mass index was 25. So they're not frail. Scheduled for Liechtenstein inguinal hernia repair. 10 of them got this multi-nutrient soup. 14 grams of L-arginine, 14 grams of L-glutamine. I can't imagine that's all at once. 1,250 milligrams of vitamin C and 55 milligrams of zinc daily. So I'm sure they must have spread that out. Starting 14 days before the surgery and ending 14 days after. Now, as I look at these nutrients, vitamin C and zinc have been looked at for stuff like bed sores and collagen repair and stuff for a long time with mixed results. And why they're adding the arginine and glutamine, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't pull the whole paper. They gave everybody one
wicked high dose of arginine. I'm surprised they don't have GI issues.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because the first study I was ever in, they gave us 30 grams of L-arginine to try to get a GH release. And we all got diarrhea. Like, everybody got diarrhea. So thanks science. Yeah, but anyway, so they made sure everybody got high quality protein, 1.5 grams per kg. And again, it makes you wonder about why the excess, something that's such a common amino acid like glutamine. But anyway, so everybody got a nice baseline of 1.5 grams per kg protein. They looked at markers type 1 procollagen propeptide, CICP. There's also a type 3, a type 5, and they looked at that in both in their serum, right, in their blood, and in the wound. So they're looking for more of this stuff, essentially, more of these potential building blocks. The results, serum pro-C5, so that type 5 procollagen propeptide, concentrations decreased post-operatively in the control group, but not in the nutrient group. So maybe correcting some of that, natural body response of a decrease in these building blocks. In wound fluid, the CICP, so that was the type 1 stuff, increased from days 1 to 2 in the multi-nutrient group, and were 49% higher than those in the control group on day 2. So not significant, but still 49% higher. So their conclusion was that oral supplementation with this arginine, glutamine, vitamin C, and zinc mixture augments collagen synthesis during the first 2 days after inguinal hernia repair. I just thought that might be interesting for any people we know. Even when I had my triceps reattached, or my ankle rebuilt years ago, I took extra zinc and vitamin C, like after the surgery. Just not thinking it's going to do anything magical, right? But, but yeah, I just thought I would share that. Maybe people can, if you guys have a surgery hernia repair or different kinds of, tendon repair, it's probably not a bad idea to get some extra C and zinc. And again, I'm a little more dubious about the arginine and glutamine, but I'm sure these authors have some good reasoning for that.
Yeah, I'd be interested too if it was sponsored by a company that makes the product, which again doesn't automatically mean it's a bad study or anything like that either. I'd be interested how they came up with the arginine and glutamine at that high of a dose.
See,
too.
you guys, we three have seen enough conferences that when you see multi-nutrient mixture, you're like, oh.
Yep, that's usually a red flag for
Right.
me right away. Like,
Right. Not that it's bogus, just makes you raise an eyebrow. Yeah, Anyway, all right, we are beyond the 20-minute mark. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about weird competition tales. Just have some fun. So. We'll be doing.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Magdy Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that, and I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book, but that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more, that's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, folks, we're back. It's Lonnie, it's Phil, it's Mike, and we're going to talk about weird contest tales, essentially. Phil is our resident competitor, competes constantly, in my mind. I know as you're older, you go for one heroic effort, like once a year kind of thing, but you have competed. Well, let's ask. I mean, how many contests do you think you've been involved in yourself competing? Is that an impossible number?
I don't know. I really don't know. More than 50? I don't know. A lot. So,
right. Yeah.
Because for a long time there, hell, when I was doing strongman, I know when I got injured my bicep, I was signed up for 8 competitions that summer.
Whoa.
So
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had a lot. So
right.
I used to do a lot.
Well, that tracks pretty well. Because you figure 3 a year for 10 years, that's 30.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So what about we'll just do round table, like your first weird tale, something that you've seen, experienced yourself.
The one that everybody remembers, if it's to do with me, it was one of the first big meets at the old super training gym. And I went there, and that's where I hurt my shoulder. So I benched and hurt my shoulder. But then it come to deadlift, and I think I pulled 750 that day. And I set the bar down, and I immediately just disappeared. Went to the back. Didn't celebrate anything, and everybody's like, where the hell did you go? After I came out, and Jim McDonald threw a camera in my face, and I pooped myself. So, and I just kind of lifted the hand, I waved, and I walked off to the bathroom. And yeah, that's where I went. So
wow,
that's where the whole like shit happens. So that would be the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
that everybody thinks about. It's like, oh, you didn't celebrate anything. You just kind of walked off.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I had to go clean up.
You had to take care of it. That's funny. Inside joke. Shit happens. Yeah. Well, it sort of illustrates the ridiculous pressure, that the body is under during some of these things. I don't know. What about you, Mike? Weird contest remembrance?
Yeah, the second one's a little more weird. The first one, I guess, is just the first meet I did. I guess if people are thinking about doing a meet, this is years ago. I just did a push-pull meet. God, this is probably 2005, 2006, something like that. And I was like, well, if I want to start coaching more people, I should probably just compete to see what it's like. And I don't really like the idea of competing. And, of course, you go through the whole thing in your head of, like, there's women there that are bench pressing more than me, and I don't know if I'm strong enough. And the coach I worked with was really awesome. He's like, just do it. You're never going to think you're strong enough. You're fine. Just show up. But unfortunately, I didn't get the email that he sent me about any of the rules, and idiot me didn't look any of them up. So the night before, he's like, hey, does your singlet fit? I'm like, singlet? What the hell are you talking about?
Oh, no.
I thought it was just like an informal meet. It's like, no, you need a singlet. I'm like, oh, God. So I'm running around the night before, like, just trying to find a basic singlet. I was so nervous for, like, 2 weeks out. Like, my digestion was just horrible. I got there, and it was a USAPL meet. And so I had the wrong socks, the wrong underwear, and the wrong shirt, in addition to having a singlet, which just barely fit, because, again, I was an idiot and didn't read the rules. And I'm like, oh, you can't have any print on your shirt. So I had to flip that inside out. I had, like, kind of a spandex underwear, so I had to not wear any underwear under the singlet. And just everything that could have possibly went wrong. The good part was I made all, the bench press went okay. I missed, the second one because I didn't wait for any of the commands. The deadlift went good. I hit all three, and they had a thing that said, oh, if you hit all three, you can take a fourth attempt if you want. And I didn't even have a belt, so I borrowed a belt from some guy in the audience, and it was just kind of a disaster. And I felt good once I was done, and then I kind of realized, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's like a lot more stuff that goes into this, and I probably should have paid attention. But I realized, looking back, that I was just so nervous about the whole thing that, like, trying to think about anything other than just doing the lifts, like, I did not pay attention to anything else at all. So I think, just like Phil said, just work with someone who is going to help you. They're going to walk you through all of that kind of stuff, especially if it's an in-person. If you have somebody there at the meet, that's super beneficial. I just showed up, like, nobody came with me. I didn't have a lift off, so the guys who ran the meet were super cool. They're like, I'll help you, and we go up there, and he's like, all right, now remember, wait for the commands. Here's the commands. And so everyone was, like, super cool there, which was kind of amazing to me because I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, if you're interested, just go ahead and do it, and in the end, it'll all work out all right.
Yeah, there's an element of bravery to what you did. You just barreled forward, and you're like, I'm going to do a lot of this wrong. Screw it.
Yeah, pretty much all of it wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My one that comes to mind for me was the Mountaineer Cup. This is, oh God, this must have been like 04, 05. I'd have to go back and look, but the Mountaineer Cup for amateur bodybuilding, it's like a tri-state thing, so it's like a regional thing. It's bigger than just a one-state kind of championship, but it was an afterthought. There was a pro powerlifting meet going on there, and I remember Ed Cohn was there, and he was competing against these Russian dudes. These old, like, you know, these guys have like streaks of gray and their big beards, and you know, they're squatting 9 bills, and I'm like, oh my God, you know. So that was my first experience watching pro powerlifters. But afterward, the evening thing, you know, was the bodybuilding stuff, and so there's a gap of time between these things. And I remember, you know, of course, I've got Dioderm on. I look, you know, ridiculous by any normal standards because you're so dark to show up on stage, kind of thing. And there's 2 things that was weird. One was I didn't want to smear like my bronzer, you know. And this is this part I hate. I hate this stuff of the primping part of the bodybuilding stuff, you know. Like you, Mike, you kind of want to just show up and just say, "Here's what I've got," you know.
Let me do the thing. I'm not winning anything. I don't expect to win a damn thing. Just let me just lift something.
Yeah. Well, my goal at that point was like, I'm not sure, because, you know, I always put so many years between when I would compete, you know, because not being juiced out of my mind, I can't just pack on 30 pounds. You know, like Arnold would say, just slap on those delts, you know, like adding some clay. I'm like, dude, not me. I can't do that. So you got to wait long enough. But anyway, and so I don't want to smear anything, and I'm in my car, and Kelly, my wife, is touching me up, and this guy walks by the car, and he's looking, and here's me, like, in, you know, practically a butt thong thing, and I'm spread out, spread eagle in the car, and she's painting me. He's probably thinking, what kind of bizarre sexual thing is going on here? But what really came to mind was when we actually, during the evening show, I mean, I wanted to do well. I mean, J.M. Mannion was taking the pictures and stuff, and I mean, there was, you know, there was some good stuff. Again, it was the little like expo because it was associated with the pro powerlifting stuff, and they delayed again and again, egregiously, the start time. So if you think about back in the pump up room, this is causing havoc. So I always like to use 2 1/4 to pump up and stuff like with benching. And if I felt like if I just had, you know, like some really silly little 10-pound dumbbell or some of the crap sometimes they have it in these pump up rooms, it's not enough to get like to, you know, puff up. So I kind of went through this series of lifts, got a good pump, and then, you know, the guy's like, no, delayed by half an hour. And everybody's like, oh, come on, you know. And then a half an hour comes by. We're all getting ready to line up and go out onto the stage. Oh, nope, another hour delay. What? So this happened like 3 times. By the time that we got on stage, I think it was after 9 p.m. I'm trying to remember this. But everybody's just like, you know what? Screw it. Like, let's just be done, you know, because it's just so anticlimactic and everybody's exhausted. I mean, imagine doing like, I don't know, let's say, because, you know, you're really kind of wired. You might do 20 reps total with some pretty heavy weights for almost every muscle group. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And after a while, you're like, I got no glycogen left, bro. Like, I'm flat. Everybody's flat and tired. And, yeah, so I think there were only like 5 guys in my class. That I was runner-up that year. But again, there weren't many people in the class. It's hardly anything to brag about. But that's what I remember, the weirdness, is the delay after delay. It really showed me how bad a contest director can screw with the athletes. You know, a poorly run event is incredibly bad experience. Now, I walked away pretty happy. You know, I mean, you know, my placing was decent, and I got some good photos and stuff like that. But just weirdness all around. Plus, the Mountaineer is like a gambling resort. You know, and so, I don't know, the whole thing with driving into the West Virginia woods and stuff to do this, all of it just seemed really odd. But how about you, Phil? Another contest weirdness story?
Oh, man. One that comes to mind for me is this was early in my powerlifting career. So you're talking back in the days when powerlifting was still, what would you say? It was still pretty rough. So back in the day, powerlifting was nothing but big, hairy, mean guys. More so than now. And anyways, I'm in a meet, and this is a flight before mine. I'm going to the bathroom. A guy runs in. He's like, watch out, I need to go over by the trash can. I'm on deck, or I'm in the hole. So if you're familiar with powerlifting, they usually call it out like, Joe's up, Sam's on deck, Rich is in the hole. So it's like, I'm in the hole. And it's like, okay. So everybody moves out of the way. This guy's in a hurry. He fucking pulls out a syringe. And he injects himself in the leg. I got to get this in me before I go squat. It's like, what are you doing?
What?
This is not going to help you in any way. The potential for bad is much greater than the potential for anything good to happen.
Good.
So, yeah, he runs in there and injects himself like a minute and a half before he has to squat.
I hope it was raw adrenaline. Like, I don't know how else.
Yeah, so that was an odd one.
Was it anabolics? I mean, you don't know, probably.
That's my guess. Yeah, it was anabolics. I mean, nobody really asked him, but that's the only thing I can think of.
What the?
So, and yeah, he's somehow thinking it's going to help him, take an injection into his quad right before he goes up and flaps a bunch of weight on the bar, squats it.
Just one leg too, I suppose, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, it swells up twice its size on one side.
Yeah.
How bizarre. Yeah, as if it's like 60 seconds to hero, Yeah. Like there's some kind of bizarre acute effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we get like the half-life of GH is what? Minuscule. And like the people that get popped for it at a meet is like it doesn't work that way.
No.
Just take the day off.
Just ignorant.
You won't get caught.
Right. So ignorant. Oh man. I had heard that one, Phil. Oh my.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike? I guess I thought when I think about Mike, you dabble in so many different things. I thought you might have something from the grip world, but I don't know. What else do you have?
The next one is so I ended up at an international grip meet in Finland last year, so we're at the Arnold, watching my buddy Adam Glass compete and some of his friends that we know. And so it's, the next day I'm talking to this 6'4", like 330-pound Finnish guy who's there, Arto. And so Adam's standing next to me, we're talking to Arto, and Arto's like, Adam, you have to come, you lift at my meet in Finland. Don't do worlds in Russia. No good. You come do my international meet in Finland instead. Adam's like, we've never been to Finland. That'd be kind of fun. And I'm like, yeah, we'll go visit. I've been to Finland before. I love it there. It's great. And Arto's like, oh, yes, you should come. You compete. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, no, you need like a special invite to compete at this. My buddy Adam's next to me. He's like, oh, Mike's done like a whole bunch of events. When I was in Minnesota, I would organize a grip events, and he would always come out. And Arto's like, yes, you come. You compete. I give you a special invite. You come. I'm like, okay.
Oh, boy.
So we went all the way over there and got a little house. My wife, Jody, came over who competed. Adam's wife, Ashley, came over and competed also. And yeah, it was fun. And for context, another side funny story is Adam's wife, Ashley, had never seen him compete before. And Adam's like one of the top, competitors in the world, probably one of the strongest people, especially per body weight in the world. And so she came out to watch him do a local event in Texas, which was a medley. So if people are not familiar with grip stuff, there's like 10 little implements and stuff. And, they're usually said to be, some of them are pretty hard. Like a lot of competitors may not finish all the events. And if you can finish all the events, then it's whoever has the lowest time is the winner. So Adam goes through first and just annihilates them, just makes it look like it's child's play. And then she watches all these other competitors come through who get like stumped on like the third event. And she goes to Adam. She's like, when are these other guys going to start trying? Because if you haven't done grip stuff, it's just weird, stuff you're picking up. So you don't have a lot of context. Some of the items like an axle and stuff like that. Yeah, that makes sense. But like a penny pinch and, some of the smaller stuff, you just have no frame of reference for it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we ended up going over to the event and competed, and it was fun. Adam did good. His wife, Ashley, got some medals. My wife, Jody, got some medals. And another side story that was funny is like a day before the event, Arto's like, hey, yes, come out to our house. We'll do sauna and jump in the lake and have a party. So we're there like the day before the competition, basically drinking with all these guys, hanging out buck naked in the sauna and jumping into the lake. And I'm like, oh, so this is how you prepare for international grip competition.
I guess.
Arto's like, yes, it'll be great. And last point. So Arto made these shirts that are just bright yellow. And I asked Adam, like, out of all the colors to pick, why did he pick like bright yellow? Adam's like, probably because they were cheaper, right? So over there when they print shirts, like the colors that don't get used a lot, you can get shirts printed on them a lot cheaper. So you could imagine this 6'4", 330-pound Finnish guy who's running the meet, who's probably one of the top hinge grip lifters in the world, running around yelling, "Go bananas! Go bananas!" And all these competitors in yellow shirts running around, and then his other phrase, like before anyone would go up to lift, he's like, "Do something!"
This is also different from, like in bodybuilding competitions, everybody's self-absorbed and they're sometimes even paranoid. And instead, this is all just like some weird party.
It's bizarre because and this is no disrespect to any of the grip competitors. Like, I would say 80 to 90% of them are definitely on the spectrum. Just because you think about it, like, you're doing an odd thing that most people aren't, and all of a sudden you find all these other people that are doing the same odd thing you're doing. Yeah. It's like, oh, these are my family, and it was just a very fun event to be around. Everyone was just, helping each other. Because I think at the end of the day, you all realize that even if you placed, in first or second or whatever, most people don't know what you're doing. Most people don't even know what powerlifting is, much less, training, on top of it.
So niche, yeah.
Yeah, so niche. But, it was super fun.
There is an element of revelry in that, right? I think if you look at almost any subculture, you see, like, I think about something like everybody's familiar with Comic-Con now. Some of the things that you see there, people are just, I'm among my kin kind of thing, Well, the social context is sort of a segue to my second one, too. I hesitate to even bring this up, but Rob would incessantly bust my chops about this, but I drove up to Fargo, and when I lived in Minnesota, so it was a very long drive for me, and nobody from the family. This is sort of a solo thing, right? Because if I diet for 20+ weeks, I would go all over. I think I was in St. Louis the week before, and I was up to Fargo for the Northern Midwest, Mr. Midwest NPC or whatever, but I wasn't tan enough, and I'm an Irish guy, so I would tan some. But then, you got to rely on, again, all this stuff I was talking about, like sprays and bronzers and all this stuff. And they had a tan booth, and I had never done that before. And I think it was like $100. Now, talk about like price gouge, because they know that these people are, they're literally at like time zero, ground zero. If they're not dark enough, they got to do something. But anyway, so I sprung for a spray. And apparently a lot of people up there were doing that, and probably not surprising. It's Fargo, and it's like March, So, but I go in the back room, and there's this big room full of people, and I've laughed about this before, but this lady goes around, and she hands out baby socks. And I think you guys know where I'm going with this, but so she hands baby socks to everybody in line. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And apparently everybody else knew. And all these guys are just stripping, and they're using these crotch socks, and I'm like, this is like way like, this is so deep in the subculture for me. Like, I've got one toe in this, but this is getting weird, you guys, and the women, men, everybody in this big room barely covering anything at all, because let's face it, when you're on stage, you need to be, richly brown, bronze all over, and I mean all over. Very weird stuff. So they hand out the socks, and everybody, put them on. And then kind of you go in this booth and, put your hands up and it sprays you down and everything. But that was some weird stuff. Like, outside of that context, it would be absolutely deviant, right? Just straight deviant behavior. That was a very, very weird thing. So suffice it to say, I don't think I ever I did the backroom spray booth thing again. It was too bizarre.
I think even just physique shows, even whether it's a guy or a women's show, just all the other things that go into it, and all the sub-industries around it, from, with the women, with the posing suits, which can be incredibly expensive, to, to shoes, to the tanning, to just everything around it. And, a lot of the tanning stuff, especially the old stuff back in the day, man, that stuff was a mess.
Oh yeah. Oh god. And then people are, there's like almost like the guy Phil talked about, like injecting something in some last desperate, looking for a ray of hope. It's like, how about you just prepared for this instead, in advance? But yeah, people with like these vasodilator, stinking, like menthol smelling sprays, and and then the dark drops are running down their chests and stuff, because of the mix of like the almond oil and the bronzer and the vasodilator spray. It's like, you're not going to bring out those veins, bro. I mean, I remember I saw a guy sitting in the like, again, pump up area. I think this might have been in St. Louis, and he's sitting there with a bottle of wine, and he's like, I'm trying to.
That, yeah.
It's almost like Arnold, doing the shot, in that, was it Pumping Iron? He did that.
I think so, wasn't it?
Trying to just, have this vasodilatory reaction. But, I mean, this guy was soft. He's not ripped at all. I'm like, you can drink that whole bottle, buddy. That's not going to bring out anything. But now, having said that, I was never hateful. I actually, as I got older and competed in the more mature events, like I would always do open plus masters. Because there's no way I wasn't going to at least do the open as well, even in my 40s. But the older guys, they just had, in my opinion, they had a much more balanced view of things. They helped each other, instead of like busting on the guy with sitting there with a bottle of wine getting half drunk. You'd be like, how about you just put that down now? Let's focus on something else. Trying to be constructive, I guess. But
I think it's like anything. Once you've probably done that many competitions in that area, like I would imagine most of those guys at that level are just doing it for themselves. I mean, obviously they want to win and they want to do well, but I think you probably have enough experience to be a little bit more realistic at that point too.
Yeah. Well, and over the years, you might think that the masters classes were a huge step down in quality from the 25-year-olds, but no. I mean, especially as technology advanced over the years, I watched the masters guys. Sometimes they looked superior to the 30-year-olds,
Yeah.
So there's that. Anyway. Okay. Well, I guess that's all I've got. I just thought a couple of funny tales of things that we've seen. If you know how we're always encouraging people, put your name on the dotted line, do a countdown. I like a year out. For bodybuilding, that makes sense to me, but for almost anybody, because then to your point, Mike, you can read the rules, you can see what's expected, you can watch videos probably, that people took at that specific event. There's video everywhere these days. You can bulk for a couple of months, and then you can cut for a couple of months, or however, each sport, whatever the demands are. But that way, if you see weird stuff, we're just trying to give some insight, I guess, that, you're not alone. Sometimes weirdness happens,
Yeah. I also think, even from my own experience, I've learned to, even something with so I volunteered at a triathlon event once, and I would always, after we had everything done to help the people or whatever, and we're just hanging out, I was just helping the first aid during the event, and I would just stand and watch the transitions, and you would see some very, I would say, pretty elite level people when they're transitioning from the swim to the bike, just completely botch it, and you're like, wow. To me, that's crazy. That's like one thing you could probably practice and save a few seconds without a lot of physical output. But you could see that some people had it down and they were like, bang, they were right on. Other people had no idea what was going on. So it's just interesting to see, even at a higher level, sometimes how people just forget certain things that could probably make a pretty big difference to them, that could be practiced just a few times and help quite a bit.
Yeah, studying the subculture of the event, of the specific event. Yeah, it's always going to be a good idea, because you're right, that there's no excuse for that. These guys they're physically freaking elite, and then they drop the ball on something that simple.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to be it. Yeah, for this week.
Next weekend.
Right
See you
on.
guys.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry. And they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the stores. We try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, you know is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.